Hello and welcome to the Gaggle, where we challenge and, if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely, and with me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle, who's also host of RT's talk show Crosstalk. Well, the rumor mill is grinding, and apparently tomorrow, the media-anointed president-elect Joe Biden will announce his first appointments, and it's the big one. It's the Secretary of State will be Antony Blinken. This is no surprise. Blinken is a longtime national security advisor to Biden. Yes, indeed, and he's been around the Democrat politics for a long time. He's a very wealthy man. Went to all the right schools. His father's a big shot in private equity in Wall Street. And, he's punched his ticket as one might expect. He played a prominent role in the Clinton administration. And then, of course, he was Deputy Secretary of State in the Obama administration. His foreign policy views are well known. He is a regime change advocate. He's an interventionist. And he has made no secret of what he intends to do in a Biden administration. He was interviewed about a year or so ago on CBS, and he explicitly promised to relaunch the war in Syria, because this is the mentality of the Democrats, or the Democrat foreign policymaking elite, which they call it humanitarian intervention, responsibility to protect. But essentially, they are fig leaves covering an aggressive interventionist foreign policy. We can't say that we haven't been warned. We knew this was coming. People voted for Biden nonetheless. And lo and behold, that is what we're getting. What's your take, Peter?
Well, exactly. He's the quintessential swamp creature, what the electorate wanted to reject in 2016. I mean, we can just go down the list. You already mentioned Syria. He regretted not more intervention in that interview. Okay. Remarkably, I'm paraphrasing here. We could have saved lives. Okay, yeah, war saves lives. Explain that to me. Okay, war saves lives. One area that he appears to backpedal a little bit is the war, the illegal undeclared war against Yemen. I tend to think it's a different calculation there. It has very little to do with Yemen, is more to get rid of MBS. Okay, it's a signal to him. Okay, and to the Saudi regime.
Right.
Also,
MBS
the usual
is Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi king. Yeah.
The usual genuflection to Israel is there. One of the other, I read just before we convened here an article in the Guardian, because there's only a few articles on there because this has just come out. But it was really interesting that the stress was to mend frayed relations with allies. Well, I think that, this is such a myopic, Washington-centric view. Particularly in Europe, there's a lot of things going on in Europe, and there's a populist upsurge, and it is a rejection of people like Blinken and the Obama foreign policy and the if you want to call it experience, Joe Biden has in foreign policy, a big cheerleader for the illegal war in Iraq. And he was a Democrat when a Republican was in office, okay? He led the Democratic charge, yeah. All right? Almost every, and going back to these allies, people always kind of want to focus it on military security. Really, it's much more economic and commercial. So the sweetheart deals that the U.S. gave European countries and the EU as a whole, the trade deals, they're going to go back on them. Oh, okay. See how the electorate feels about that. Okay, Tony, it's a lot more complicated than you want to make it. Foreign policy isn't a cardboard box. Okay, And this is exactly what they're looking at. They've learned nothing over the last 4 years whatsoever, absolutely nothing. And they have not understood why the electorate rejected the Obama-Biden foreign policy in 2016. So no learning curve here whatsoever. I would well imagine the baked-in hostility to Russia will be maintained, which you and I have talked about repeatedly here on the Gaggle. It remains to be seen what China is, the situation with China. Oh, with the Iran deal, putting the United States back into the Iran deal, it's not that simple, okay? It's not that simple. A lot has happened. And when they say, when the presumptive media declared Secretary of State says, the United States will return to the Iran deal, but he's not being honest. It's also Iran's foreign policy, missile policy, its own self-defense, and its actually very definition of sovereignty. Those are not up for grabs, okay? They're not.
Right, right.
So, I mean, Trump made a cardinal mistake leaving that agreement, and I've said that from day one.
Right.
It should have been enhanced upon.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think it's thoroughly disingenuous, and people who should know better have fallen for the verbal trickery of, well, we will return to the JCPOA. No, what they've said is that we will return to the JCPOA if Iran comes into compliance with the JCPOA. Now, of course, what do they mean by compliance? To the extent that Iran is not in compliance, that is as a result of the American sanctions that went into place following the Trump administration's withdrawal. So if Iran has excess nuclear material, that is simply because it's not able to export the excess processed uranium that it has been producing. So therefore, that's why Iran is not in compliance. So to say that, well, Iran has to come into compliance, is putting cart before the horse. And of course, as you say, there are other issues that a Biden administration will undoubtedly raise with Iran, which is its foreign policy, because it has been a very strong supporter of Bashar al-Assad, whom Biden will unquestionably target. And it is about its ballistic missile program, which it is entitled to, and it obviously needs for its defense, given that it has been under attack and was attacked by the United States. So it needs all of that. So anytime you're going to start putting those into the condition, yeah, if you do these, we will come back to the JCPOA. It's a non-starter. So as I say, people who should know better have fallen for this little verbal trick of Blinken. But you have to this whole history. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I guess the clock is ticking for another chemical attack in Syria. Okay, another pretext.
Right.
Considering the OPCW has been completely neutered now as a international agency to keep an eye on these very dreadful weapons, and now with that out of the way, pushed aside and completely discredited. Right. The clock is ticking, okay? Absolutely. And exactly like people like Blinken that want this kind of thing.
Well, exactly right. And if you remember, the famous red line of Obama's was actually a creation of Blinken. The whole point of the red line was to trigger American military intervention, because that's it. If you say that, oh, if there's a chemical attack, we will intervene, and we will intervene militarily against the government of Bashar al-Assad. Well, of course, that was just a blank check for any terrorist group to stage a chemical weapons attack. It was, Blinken did this, and lo and behold, there was immediately a chemical weapons attack, and Obama was about to intervene. It just so happened that no one in Europe wanted to do this, and that's in fact, it's a very interesting point. It goes back to what you just said. The notion that the Allies are back. Really, they're back? They want to go back and start bombing Syria? I don't think so. There's no great support for that.
And those refugees, they don't end up on the panhandle of Florida, do they, George?
Right. No, exactly. People suddenly will recall 2015 and suddenly that a massive procession of refugees through Europe. Anyone wants to go back to that era? It goes like it's this extraordinary kind of bubble in which American foreign policy making elite and the media, they're very dumb media. They're very stupid people who just hang
The
on
Kurds,
to words.
the Kurds, the Kurds.
Exactly. The Kurds, yes, exactly. And, they look at Obama. Oh, isn't he a cool guy? And then they look at Blinken. He's all blow dried and looks very much, always well dressed. Looks like an absolutely member of the elite that the media want to belong to. Please, we want to be like that. I want to be like you. And you can see that they just. Yeah, go ahead.
One of the interesting things too is that I saw this in Politico and in The Guardian, and I thought it was really kind of maybe an intentional fake out, is that Blinken has an outreach to progressives in the Democratic Party. Which I'm not really sure what that's supposed to mean, okay? Because most of the progressives I have come across, at least through crosstalk and other venues, is that they are just as adamantly anti-war as you and I are, okay? So I don't know what this is, this kind of a fake
I think it means AOC and Ilhan Omar, who actually go along with all these foreign policies. I've never heard of them criticize any of these foreign policy ventures. I mean, AOC had no problem, even when it was the Trump administration, when the Trump administration imposed sanctions on Venezuela, even that she couldn't bring herself to condemn because her party leaders supported all that. Her party leaders, they loved Guaido. So they'll go along with that. So I think that's what he means by progressives. I don't think he means Jimmy Dore.
But I also think that there's a element of domestic politics here, because they're always going to be keeping an eye on the progressive wing, because they keep promising after the election, and they never get anything as usual. Okay, we'll see where that goes. I think that's very interesting. Also, I think,
following on what you just said, I mean, the way they try to reach progressives is with this talk of humanitarian intervention. But who can be against humanitarian? Who can be against responsibility to protect? We're trying to protect these people, these poor, innocent women, children, babies. We're trying to protect them from this evil monster, Bashar al-Assad, who's supported by an even more evil monster, Vladimir Putin. And they're hoping that the progressives are sufficiently stupid that they'll go, whoa, maybe we should protect.
Well, that's going to be tested.
It worked back in '99 against Yugoslavia. I don't think it's going to work anymore.
Oh, well, he has his fingerprints on Yugoslavia as well, George.
Yes, he does. He does indeed. Yes, exactly. He's an alumnus of the Clinton administration. He was in the foreign policy of that. And so, yes, he was very much involved in the Yugoslavia capers. So, absolutely, this is who he is.
It's you know what? It's what he is. It's not who he is. It's what he is. Okay, he is the face of the globalist in the foreign policy swamp. That's what he is. Again, when I was reading the Guardian article, I mean, these blatant lies and misinformation, and no one fact checks it. Is it something like going from a transition of a Trump administration where they cage children at the border? Right. Okay, this will be a welcomed relief. Well, no. The cages were built by Obama. Okay, so I mean, it's amazing how these things just never. They have an endless half-life, don't they? It's extraordinary.
Right. That's right. That's exactly right. And of course,
but the Blinken is, what they're doing is, it's empire with a professional managerial face. Like you said, very well groomed and kept and urbane and well educated, went to all the right places, the right connections. It has to be good, right? That's what it is. I mean, that's how they sold the war on terror. Look at Obama. African-American, well-educated, well-groomed. I mean, Joe Biden even said he was a clean guy, which is typical of Joe.
There's no question. That snobbish aspect was a very, very important part of the detestation of Trump. He was New York, although he actually went to Wharton, very good school. He's reeked of New York, the streets of New York, Queens, the way he talked, his accent. He ate fast food. He didn't eat foie gras. He was overweight. And he was just not the sort of person they aspire to be. The sort of the smooth talking, blow dried, athletic looking Blinken. So yeah, that's why the media identify with these people. And they've always done this. I mean, they've always had a kind of the shallow view. I mean, going all the way back to Kennedy and Nixon. I mean, it was never a big policy difference between the two, but JFK was the kind of person they wanted to be. And Nixon was, just wasn't. He came from a poor, family. He just didn't have the sort of the class that JFK had.
Yeah, and it's interesting that in a Guardian article, they like used three adjectives, and one of them was kind. He's a kind man. Well, how can you say someone is kind if they illegally dismantle a recognized state by the United Nations, Yugoslavia, have regrets for not killing more people in Syria? I mean, how can you use words like kind? Oh my goodness. I mean, it's really empire has this whole propaganda flair to it, because that's how you sell empire.
Right.
Because if you looked at the results of empire, it's abhorrent and disgusting, and it doesn't work. See, Tony Blinken is like one of these characters. Let's just put it into perspective for our viewers here. He's part of this foreign policy blob that is terrified of losing the unipolar moment. And it's actually gone, but these people don't understand that, okay? And they will lash out as much as possible to maintain what they think is that unipolar moment. But that's an illusion, it is gone. And that is why so much of the world looks at American foreign policy as being amazingly reckless. And these people, they live in this unipolar moment fog, okay? Because they can't understand the world that has changed and left the US behind in many ways. In many ways, Donald Trump understood that. That's why he said, we got to take care of ourselves first.
Right. No, I think
if we don't take care of ourselves first, we're going to become irrelevant. Why do we need this huge, shiny military, but we have half the country living in poverty?
Right. No, I think that's exactly right. And I think that it's been going since the Reagan era. And you get among the Republicans this nostalgia, this nostalgia for the good old, let's bring back the Reagan era. And then again, then we have the unipolar moment, the sort of the days of the Clinton era. Oh, we'll go back to that. Oh, it's going to be so wonderful. United States leading this.
Both of it.
Yeah, that's right. We're gonna lead this global coalition, and we're gonna take care of Milosevic, we're gonna take care of Assad, we're gonna take care of Saddam Hussein, we're gonna take care of it all, and everyone's gonna come gratefully to the United States. Thank you for this leadership. And it's nuts. And they never look at just the catastrophic consequences. I mean, everyone can see the catastrophic consequences when all these things that you have done in Libya, Iraq, and Syria have been absolutely disastrous. And they still think, oh, we can just go back to that, or if only we can rectify this little thing or that little thing. If only we'd stayed a little bit longer in Libya, or if only we'd stayed a little bit longer in Iraq, or if only we'd used a little more force against Bashar al-Assad. It could all have worked. It might all have been a wonderful.
No, the simple thing is they were wrong every single time, and they don't learn from that here. Yeah. One of the interesting things that's kind of out there, and we'll see what happens, is are they going to change their policy towards Venezuela? Are they going to say, Mr. Guaido, thank you for your services? You can go work on one of Trump's golf courses right now if you want.
Well, again, it was the Obama administration was the one that first launched sanctions against Maduro. Then they're not going to go back and start, we'll start working with governments in Venezuela and Nicaragua. I mean, it's not what they're about.
You see, but the reason
Biden's about.
But see, that's the reason why I bring it up, because Trump's had some very specific ideas that he didn't work out. I don't think he thought them well out, and I don't think he enacted upon them. And it's all a moot point because he had the entire apparatus underneath him going against his will. Okay, but the thing is that Trump tried to thwart the foreign policy in the interest of developing America first, which I think is perfectly fine. China does China first, Russia does Russia first. All countries do it first, okay? Why it's a slur is beyond me. It's beyond common sense. But Trump, Trump tried to veer away. For example, I mean, what is the purpose of NATO? It's the big grift, okay? Okay, we sell arms there. I guess that's a good thing, okay? But you guys are rich. You can take care of yourselves. You can buy our weaponry. If you're worried about Russia, we can buy our weapons.
Well, but NATO is about the projection of power. I mean, how else can the United States launch its wars and against Yugoslavia, against Syria? NATO provides both a fig leaf. Hey, this is a collective action. It's nothing unilateral. And it's obviously a lot of money coming to the United States. So America desperately wants to keep NATO going, because without NATO, America just becomes one great power among many. It's NATO that provides the United States with this.
And what they've done is the military command operations of NATO, they've fused in AFRICOM. No coincidence there, right? Because that's where you project power to south into Africa. Right. The thing is that it's what the foreign policy that Trump inherited was a mess. I think it's still a mess. And Trump was president. He was, commander in chief. He has to take responsibility for at least parts of it. But it's the same bureaucracy, and so everybody knows each other. Everyone's familiar with everyone, and the interagency consensus is back. Okay, yes, without question this time. Right.
It's a very interesting issue, and I think it's something that we need to look at. And one hopes that if Trump does plan to run in 2024, he will have learned his lessons of why he failed. Because, on the one hand, he doesn't want to be in Syria, but he launched the 2 bombing attacks on Syria. He doesn't want to be in Syria, but then he invents a new role. We're there to keep the oil. He says, I want good relations with Russia, but hey, I'm going to sell lethal weapons that Obama didn't do. Look, I'm doing even more than Obama.
And Gina Haskell showed the pictures of the dead ducks.
That's it, exactly. So it's because he ultimately gave a confusing message, as on other things, that he failed in his administration. And one hopes now he will learn that you shouldn't do this. So, but yeah, I mean that's the thing. I mean, I think you're right that Trump did have an understanding that all these alliances actually serving no discernible.
Well, I mean, they're so expensive. Look. I mean, let's look at the Korean Peninsula. Okay, the war has been over for what, 70 years. Okay, there is an armistice. Okay, there is a consensus in the South to have peace with the North. The North would like it because it wants to assure its existence. That's its primary directive, to make sure it continues to exist here. But you have the United States, you have the Pentagon, you have all this military brass. That it's a good grift. I mean, that's a huge military outlay every single year. Tens, hundreds of billions of dollars, been put into that. They don't want that to come to an end. I mean, South Korea, for a country of its size and its population, is one of the most successful countries in the world. It is an unbelievable Asian engine. I mean, it's a small place. It's a very, not a large population, but I mean, very ingenuity of unbelievable magnitude here. They're rich. They're really rich. They can take care of it, okay? I mean, think of this, is that if a military conflict were to happen on the Korean Peninsula, automatically the South Korean military falls under the command of the United States. That's built into their laws, okay? People, I don't know if Donald Trump knew that, but I mean, why is it the responsibility of the United States? There wouldn't be a conflict if you made the regional partners in China, Russia, North Korea, South Korea sit down and say, let's hash this out. But it's always this moral hazard. You can always say no, because he'll step in. Okay. And this is what we have all around the world.
But the fact is that, any attempt by any countries to change this arrangement leads immediately to conflict with the United States. I mean, Germany doesn't want American troops there. 75 years since the end of the war. Yet Germany is reluctant to confront the United States. I mean, it can confront the United States on this or that policy, usually on something economics or trade. It will not confront the United States on this whole ridiculous military alliance that is doing nothing. I mean, doing nothing for German security. I mean, there is no Red Army terrifying Germany.
This is where the illusion is going to start wearing off, because the European Union, and let's face it, let's say the truth, the European Union under the leadership of Germany, Macron wants to make a bid, but it's not going to happen. If it's anyone, it's going to be the Germans. They have to decide what their standing is in the world. Right. Because they're going to become irrelevant as China and the United States and its allies collide, okay? God forbid a military conflict, but they are colliding and they will continue to collide. If Europe wants to be on the sideline, you can, okay? But then you're going to be irrelevant. And this is what's happening. This is what, at no time in history have we had a block of countries, a union of this kind, that of the wealth of its kind, of its intellectual property and its educated population, that doesn't have the commensurate power on the international stage. It's like a vacuum. Yep. And it will have to be filled. You can submit, or you can go your own path. And inevitably, if Europe wants to remain relevant, it's going to have to go its own path. And a lot of populists in Europe understand that. I mean, when you look at it, you have to understand is that when you look at the militaries of Germany, of France, of Italy, all the major characters, the generals and the colonels, they all spend time in the United States at one time, okay? I mean, they are so intensely integrated here. It's very hard to think outside of that. Right. Okay, I mean, Merkel has talked about Germany has to lead, and has even made the disparaging remarks. Even if Biden comes in, Germany has to decide issues of its own here. But then she has the same problem that Trump experiences. You have the national security state say, no, it works, everything's fine. Why fix it if it's not broken? I mean, this creates the inability to imagine something new. Okay.
Well, I think that's right.
And this is a stranglehold. And it's by design.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And when you think of the what's in the national interest of the European states, it is to have a good working relationship with Russia. And NATO, its raison d'etre is to confront Russia. However much NATO leaders say, oh, no, we want to have good relations with Russia, we're not here, we're not hostile, we have no aggressive plans. Its very existence is an affront to Russia, and it has clearly, it has moved its boundaries right up against Russia's borders, and has incorporated states that were part of the USSR. It is really have troops stationed within
part of Imperial Russia.
St. Petersburg.
Parts of Imperial Russia as well.
Exactly. NATO has made clear its intention of bringing in Ukraine, bringing in Georgia, and and of course it wouldn't stop there. Even if they brought them in, next stop, Armenia, Azerbaijan, next, Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan. That's NATO's goal. Everyone knows this NATO's
goal. And you know what the parallel goal? I mean, that's the goal, but what is the geopolitical thinking? And it's very, very clear. This is a substitute for the United Nations, because this goes back to McCain's idea of the League of Democracies, some nonsense like that. So what it is that, because remember, Samantha Power was always so angry about Russia's veto at the United Nations. See, what you just described by enhancing NATO becomes an alternative, okay? And basically, the United States leading this would say to the world, this is the real international community. The UN, we're not even going to pay for it anymore, okay? And so what that does is it creates a substitute. But see, at the UN, they have the Security Council and there's the veto. In this organization, there is no veto, okay? There's consensus, okay? It doesn't mean everyone agrees, okay? That's just a code word. These are the orders and you will follow them.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. And that's always been the case in NATO. Shut up and do as you're told. We've seen this before. We saw this in Yugoslavia. The NATO member states were not at all enthusiastic about launching a bombing campaign against a European state that threatened nobody. Basically, they were just told to shut up. We call the shots here. So there, you have a consensus dictated by the United States. So it's not even like the European Union where you have to have some kind of unanimity. Here, there's no unanimity. America calls the shots and you do as you're told. And that's exactly what you're saying is that, yeah, that's the alternative international community. Because of course, when Samantha Power or other permanent representatives like Nikki Haley, say at the UN, the international community abhors what Russia's doing. What international community? You mean you and your NATO pals? That's the international community. But the more you bring in these states, and the more you kind of whip up anti-Russian fervor in all these states, the more you kind of create an alternative international community. And you're absolutely right. That Russian veto infuriates the United States, and particularly the bailiwick of Samantha Power, which was the responsibility to protect. So well, hey, it's humanitarian. How can you be against it? How can you veto a humanitarian intervention?
Yeah, and that makes void and null sovereignty. Okay, that's a convenient back door to yeah. We have to destroy this country in the name of humanity. I mean, these people, you can't make this stuff up here. Right. One good sidebar here is that Susan Rice looks like she's been neutralized here. Okay, because Tony Blinken looks like he has enough friends in the Republican Party, or like-minded, okay, and believing in this myth of the unipolar moment. So I don't think they'll have any problems whatsoever. I mean, they'll have cocktails after the vote on his nomination, okay, which is a pathetic commentary. Okay, it's a pathetic commentary on the elites here, the uniparty when it comes to foreign policy.
That's it. The Republicans will say he's entitled to his cabinet. I mean, that's the cliche of the moment. He's entitled to his cabinet because the Democrats didn't have that same attitude towards Trump, but he's entitled to make his appointments. Yeah, I think he'll waltz through very comfortably, and people like him commanding money and influence, the Republicans will buy into.
Well, we forgot about Jake Sullivan.
Jake Sullivan, exactly. Now Jake Sullivan he worked for Hillary Clinton.
Another creature of the swamp.
Creature of the swamp, and of course a notable purveyor of Russiagate. He was, of course, he had a job alongside Bill Kristol on the Alliance for Securing Democracy, a nice little boondoggle, the goal of which was to show that Russia was everywhere. Whatever nefarious goings on anywhere in the world, you can bet your bottom dollar that Putin's Kremlin is behind it. Sullivan was a part of that, indeed.
What I always find hilarious, Russian media coverage in the west of Russia, is that two things, opposite things, are always present at the same time. Russia is just a glorified gas station with nuclear weapons, or it's like James Bond. It can get into your brain. What was it like in Dr. Strangelove? It's in the water. They can control what's in the water, okay? Yeah. I mean, so you have these diametrically opposed perceptions of Russia, and they can, in this mindset, they coexist, okay? It's extraordinary. And there's no self-reflection on how ludicrous and stupid it is.
Right. No, I mean, but that's always a classic piece of American propaganda. You have this evil person who's supposedly done all these evil deeds, but he's so stupid that he doesn't even conceal his tracks. So, you have Bashar al-Assad, who for some reason launches a chemical weapons attack at the very moment that there are chemical weapons inspectors in his country. Can you imagine, that's what he does. And so you say, why would this evil monster, Bashar al-Assad, launch a chemical weapons attack at the very moment the UN weapons inspectors are in his country? Well, he's just showing us his arrogance that he can do this. Wow, yeah, that's it. That's exactly how vulnerable countries think. Let me just
right, and the white helmets always there at the right moment, always working in an area controlled by Al Qaeda and its affiliates. But never mind, never mind.
Right. And the amazing thing, this piece of propaganda, which is so idiotic. I mean, no, Soviet propaganda was always vastly more sophisticated than that. People, the media just buy into, obviously because they're so arrogant that they think they can get away with it. So,
George, when all is lost and you have no idea what to say and you're up against the wall, one word: Kurds.
Exactly.
That will save you. No, the reason why I said that, there was a few years ago on Crosstalk, and we were talking about like what was going on in, I think it was like Nagorno-Karabakh or something like that. And we were talking about Armenia and Azerbaijan. And we had a guest on, he was pretty clueless. And, he said something that I pushed back on, I think rather gently. I wasn't trying to be rude. And then he got really angry and just said, well, what about Chechnya? It's like, what about it?
What about it, exactly? Right. Yes. Yeah. It's the classic non sequitur. What about the gays? What about them?
Okay, George, I got to wrap this up. I got to do.
Okay, so anyway, we will continue to zero in with our laser-like focus on the doings of the election legal actions, and of course Biden's would-be appointments. So thank you very much, Peter. And remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye.